Hello, welcome. It's that time of year again. And every time we get to December, I think, you know what? I'm not going to film this video. I might get another favourite. But do I ever get another favourite? Of course I blinking don't. If I sound a bit weird or if I look terrible, I do have a cold, although I could just look terrible normally and I'm just trying to excuse my appearance. Anyway, let's get into the list of my favourite books this year and start with a preface, because I had probably the worst reading year of my entire life. None of the following books that you will see are technically 5 stars. The best we're going to get is a 4.5. And there are only 8 of them, when normally I do a list of 10. So I think we can all predict how 2024 went for me reading-wise. But let's just get into the list, because there were some standouts, albeit not many. So first I'm going to talk about The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monica Kim. I always get the title of this book wrong. I don't even know why. This is about our narrator who has a questionable family situation. Her mum seems to have a terrible track record with the boyfriends that she picks, and our narrator really hates her mother's new boyfriend. He's just a walking, talking red flag, and then she becomes obsessed with eyeballs, and it becomes pretty unhinged from there. I don't know why, but I love a good unhinged narrator. I really don't understand why the trope just works for me so well. This did go there. If you don't like eyeballs, maybe don't read this book. So, our first thriller of the video is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell, who I've had a kind of mixed relationship with her in the past. I've liked one of her books and thought another one of her books was just kind of meh. However, this one was very intense. So essentially what this is about is we have Alex, who is a podcaster, and she invites this woman, Josie, onto said podcast. I mean, Josie kind of like blags her way in by saying that she wants to rebuild her life. She's in quite a dodgy relationship with this man who apparently she met when she was 15 and he is quite considerably older than her. And quite clearly, someone is not telling the truth. Alex has no idea how much of Josie's story is actually true. And it kind of devolves from there into this really intense, really well-crafted and interesting thriller book. The audiobook is so good. It's so atmospheric. It's like listening to a true crime documentary. I just had such a good time reading this book. I was reading it when I was ill as well, and to even get through a book when I was curled up in bed with terrible brain fog, I think that is quite an achievement. So yeah, that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. A book I thought could have gone either way is A Study in Drowning by Reid. This is about a girl called Effie, who is obsessed with this author, and then this author dies and she ends up going to the author's estate along with another student. And quite clearly there's some strange things going on with the author. Was he who he says he was? Who knows? What transpires is a very atmospheric book. There's a lot of metaphors about drowning and water. I do love a book like this one that's about academia, and although it's YA, it does feel a little bit more mature, which is kind of what I tend to go for if I read that age category these days. There's also a romance in this that I didn't hate, which is so rare. I loved the writing, I thought it was a well-crafted story, and further praise, it got me out of a reading slump. What more could you ask for? A book that I expected to like and ended up really thoroughly enjoying is The Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi by Shannon Chakraborty, who I believe wrote the... I'm going to forget this. She wrote the Daevabad trilogy, but I can't remember what the first book is called. City of Brass? I know it has brass in the title. Anyway, that's not important. This is about Amina, who is a 40-year-old pirate, and it's kind of about her trying to get the band back together for one final heist. It's kind of like historical fantasy, in that we're set in Middle Ages, Middle East, lots of the word middle there, which is an area of history that I don't know very much about. However, this is fantastical in the same way that I would say Babel is fantastical, so it's quite light in those elements. I never know whether I actually like pirates in books, but on this occasion this worked for me because I think the character work was done very well. I really liked the main character that we were following. It's 500 pages, but I didn't really feel as though I struggled through it. I wanted to keep reading, and that is certainly a sign of a good book in my opinion. I also love the cover. I think the spine is equally wonderful, and I'm eagerly anticipating the sequel whenever that decides it wants to make an appearance on my bookshelf. Honestly, the biggest surprise of the year is Funny Story by Emily Henry. Now, I know I say this in every video if you're a regular on the channel, I am not a fan of romance books. I don't know what it is, but I just do not like them. Apart from this one, which I gave a solid 4 stars. My relationship with Emily Henry has been extremely interesting. I really didn't like Book Lovers, I liked Beach Read, and I thought Happy Place was just okay. So I was using this book as a kind of last decider. It was Emily Henry's last straw, her last chance to impress me, and she managed to. This is about Daphne, and her boyfriend Peter breaks up with her and goes back to his female best friend Petra, so Daphne decides to move in with Miles, the guy that Petra was dating that she left, and Daphne and Miles then have a sort of relationship. They move in together and they decide to basically make their exes jealous, they pretend to date, and it all just kind of devolves from there. I've heard a lot of people pitch this as a fake dating book. It really isn't. I think that is a really false way of describing Funny Story because they really only do it to try and make their exes jealous. There's no sort of real progression of a fake dating book in here, like they have to pretend to kiss, they have to pretend to like each other. None of that, really. I think the best part of this book is that it feels quite realistic. I think one of the things I don't like normally about romance books is the fact that they are really unrealistic and often quite unbelievable, especially when there are loads of tropes, because I just feel like the author is sat at their desk just ticking off a checklist, whereas this didn't feel like that. It felt real. I loved what this book said about relationships and what it's like trying to find someone that you actually feel a connection with, and it was just surprisingly good. Like, I'm so surprised that this book has made it to this list. Couldn't have told you back at the start of this year that I was going to be putting a romance book onto my best of the year list. A book that I am really happy to see on this list that I have been meaning to get to since probably 2021, I think that's when I first heard about this book, is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. And in this one we are following 17-year-old Jane Daniels, who kind of has a bit of an obsession with slasher films, and she kind of predicts that her town may become the scene of a slasher. This book is quite meta. There's lots of references to slashers and slasher tropes and conventions, and once again we have a very interesting main character. We're stuck in her head for 440 pages, although I believe it is actually told in third person. Still, it didn't impact making Jade a really interesting and compelling character. I read this book quite fast. For a 400 and something page book, the pages just flew by because I wanted to know what was going to happen. I must admit though, it is quite slow, but I was just interested seeing how everything was going to build up and climax where it did. This absolutely won't be for everyone, but it was for me. The penultimate book on this list is Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson. Now, this is about Ernest Cunningham, and he is just talking us through everyone in his family, and for some reason or another, they've all killed someone, and he gathers with his relatives at a resort in typical thriller book fashion, and there's a murder. I just loved how meta and self-referential this book is. It's another one that kind of references and pokes fun at tropes of the genre. This time, the mystery thriller. I really liked the writing style and the character voice. I thought it was very compelling and I raced through this book. Always the sign that I'm having a good time. I really like books like this for some reason. I don't know why. But any one that seems to kind of take the mick out of itself, I quite often have a good time. And I don't know what that says about me, but clearly it says something. And finally, How to Become the Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Wexler. Believe it or not, it took me 3 times to try and say his name. Yeah. This is about Davy, who keeps ending up in this fantasy world. She keeps dying and then just finding herself back in the same place, having to repeat the cycle all over again. And she decides that maybe this time she should try and become the Dark Lord, because all of her attempts at being good and righteous have failed her. So we follow her dying multiple times and getting a gang together so that she can achieve her Dark Lord desires, and of course she encounters lots of foes and enemies along the way, and it's basically the same flavour as everyone in my family has killed someone, but in the fantasy genre. I must admit though, there is a lot of swearing, but if that doesn't bother you, or you can just become desensitized to all of the times the author mentions the F word in one sentence, then you might enjoy this book. I think all 3 of the last ones are very much a case of, if you enjoy the writing style, if you enjoy the character voice, then you will like the book, but if you don't, then you won't. So I'm not going to say this is a book that everyone needs to read, because I don't think it is, but it was very much a book that I needed to read. I can sum this book up in one sentence. It's just fun. Sometimes we just need a fun book. Sure, yeah, it's no intellectual classic that I'm going to be spending hours bent over, studying, annotating, thinking deeply about, but that doesn't mean that it's not necessary to read every now and again. Those were my favourite books of the year. I hope you have enjoyed this video. I hope maybe you have found some recommendations as to what you're going to be reading next year. Definitely let me know what your favourite books of the year were. Thank you very much for watching. If you've got to the end, comment. I'm trying to think of something that's related to a favourite. Maybe comment like a heart emoji, any one, because I know there are loads to kind of represent the books you've loved. Otherwise, do all the lovely YouTuber things, like this video, subscribe, comment for the algorithm, all those lovely things. I hope you have had a good Christmas period. Once again, I know not always the easiest time for people, but I hope you are having a good day, and I hope that you will join me in my next video. Goodbye.